This we will just touch on because of it is still a matter under investigation and all. The level of political intolerance that we have witnessed. Just yesterday there was a story we received in our newsrooms of a political aspirant, an MCA political aspirant in KBC County, who was hacked and actually unfortunately lost his life while doctors were trying to salvage his life in hospital. The consequences are still very unclear. Investigations are still underway to understand what might have led to his death, but it's coming just 3 days before I understand he took part in the ongoing party primaries. Really unfortunate. But why I'm raising this point is because leaders from that region, what they were saying is they were calling for security for all aspirants in the country, that it is time that the government should really get serious and offer security for any person who is vying on the is on the race to the 2022 general election. So my question to you both, what is happening? Is it that serious? The former Prime Minister the other day had his helicopter stoned, and we've seen even a rally that the DP once held in the Eastlands part of Nairobi became chaotic at some point. And when we see such things in our political environment, what is it that it is, what message is it sending about us as a populace? Willie, let me begin with you.
Hey, that's a cause to worry, Serfine. If we have gotten to the point of hacking aspirants to death, then what is in waiting for the voter? That is someone just selling their manifesto. And most probably they're in the wrong party in that region. Maybe they are supporting the wrong candidate. Wrong in terms, this is not the popular presidential or maybe governor candidate that people are saying they want. Just someone who has a divergent opinion on where they would want to lead the people. Now, God forbid that 2007, 2008 may look like a joke if we continue that way. After the former Prime Minister's helicopter was stoned the other day, I took time to peruse through the social medias. And I'm telling you, the things I read there were shocking. Not just shocking. It shakes your whole body. Guys from the other side of the country, where the Prime Minister comes from, were saying, we want now Ruto to come and ask for votes here. What does that tell you? They're inviting him now for trouble. Okay? Now, what will happen to the voter if the leaders we look up to adhere to the law and lead by example cannot tolerate each other? What about the people down there? What about the voters? What will happen? What is the government doing? What are we doing as leaders? What are you doing as a presenter here? What is the role of everybody in this country? Because when this nation burns from one end, trust me, everybody in the nation will be affected. And I think it is high time we preach peace more than campaign. And I think we as the voters and as the people, we need to vote for people who are talking about peace more than people who are talking even about their manifestos and their political sides, because it might get to a place that peace in this country might be something that will be long gone for a very long time. Not so long ago, look at what happened in 2013. A whole economy was coming to a standstill 2 days in a week, Monday and Thursday, because more than 5 million people felt that their leader, the way elections were conducted, there were some issues. Now, what happens? Because if you look at the projections, it is the same case scenario. This election is almost like 50-50. Even if Raila is ahead or William Ruto may be ahead, but look at the number of followers. What happens when these people start saying it was not free and fair, when they start questioning the process of election? Where does that leave us as a nation? And I think we all have a duty now to preach peace before we ban this nation.
It is true. Very pertinent questions you're raising there. It is a point of concern for Kenyans who have been part of history and have seen how this country almost went to the brink of falling apart based on the differences that could not, the political differences that we had as a country. Gibson, I mean, is it too much to ask if I say that we ought to get to a point where our diversities politically do not necessarily break us, even in our social fabric. I mean, politics is just like a game like any other. Look at football match, for instance. You support a different team, I support a different team. We go there, we watch the game, we enjoy, we come out of there laughing. Can't that, apply when it comes to politics?
Honestly, Sav, I think it can apply. It's only that we have been having some few elements. I would want to say it's few elements because it's not everyone. You've seen very civil campaigns happen. It's not on a daily basis that we have these issues of people being stoned. It's unfortunate that that happened to the Prime Minister, former Prime Minister. It's also unfortunate to the MC aspirant who lost his life. But what I want to say is that at one point, Kenyans will have to decide. Kenyans will have to decide which way to go, because we are at that point where we have to determine what actually we want to identify with. And I don't think Kenyans will go for the aspect that we are people who cannot be able to control their emotions when it comes to political. Politics is a highly emotive game, but I think it now behooves the political luminaries, if I want to use that word, to actually call upon their troops that it's not about a do or die thing. There's Kenya to live after the contest. We need to shake hands and continue and grow the economy. We are at a place that our economy does not give any room for us to waste time, for us to engage in any sideshows. We only need to focus on the economy. And if we start bringing issues to do with what happened in 2008, 2007, 2008, it will be unfortunate, and I don't think we'll salvage this country.
True. Willie, I remember last time we were having a sit down with you on the show here, a very powerful parting shot you gave. I just want you to pick up from there. If I have a problem today, I will not go to Raila Odinga or William Ruto. I will go to my next door neighbor. I mean, bring this point home for a Kenyan who is watching you this morning to know that at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter, who is in power, who is not in power. At the end of the day, the issue you're going through, the person who will be able to hold your hand in it is that person who is right next to you. I mean, just want you to talk to somebody who's working.
Saf, when we have 4 years without elections, we are living in peace as brothers and sisters. We are Kenyans. But the electioneering year, that is when we are reminded who we are. That's when you're reminded you're a Kikuyu. Kikuyus don't vote for Luos. They don't vote for so-and-so. You're reminded you are a Kalenjin. And so what happens is that you stop looking at me like you're the neighbor whom you have been walking with through life. And you start now looking at me as your political threat. Raila is very far from the voter. William Ruto is very far from the voter. He probably doesn't even know your existence. In case of an emergency today at night, who do you call? Who do you run to first? Not even your folks way back at home. You talk to your next door neighbor. This is the person who comes to your rescue anytime. And so we need to think about our relationship with each other as Kenyans more than we think about our emotional attachment with our politicians who probably don't even know we exist. And this is an electioneering year when now these politicians are looking for any form of gathering. And so if there are so many funerals, it is to their advantage. If we hack each other, it is to their advantage. Don't be surprised.
That's an interesting way of looking at it.
Yes, they will come to your burial and say, this guy was a very good supporter of mine. Probably you've never even met. And then they'll say, but remember, you guys, I'm vying to be your next MP. Please vote for me. So don't let these voters look for votes in your burial. Preserve your life. Take care of your brother. Take care of your sister, who is from another region, not necessarily from the same mother. Because we as Kenyans, it is up to us, and we need to practice political tolerance and emotional intelligence when it comes to voting and elections. Because elections come and go. And how many months do we have to election?
Less than 5.
Less than 5. Do we ban a whole nation because of an election now? Do we ban all the work that we have been doing for for the last 4 years because of 5 months to elections, 1 day of voting, we destroy everything that there is. I think what is important right now, Saf, is peace than even prosperity. Let's talk about peace. When there is peace, people will prosper. But even there is no peace, how can we prosper? Yeah.
There's no development. That actually came to the fore, courtesy of the handshake. When the handshake happened, actually one of the reasons why those proponents of the handshake were saying the reasons why they did it was because nothing was going on at that particular time. The country was burning. So it was necessary and prudent for us to really just sort of embrace each other and come to a realization that we need to move on. So why do we want to reverse the gains? My question again. But Gibson, just what role do leaders have to play in peace building of this particular country? Because we cannot mobilize ourselves as voters and say we want peace and leave them out of this conversation. How do they come in, and what should they essentially do as a proactive approach to prevent, making this country fall apart?
Honestly, Sav, I think leaders play a critical role.
Yeah, what should they do?
They need to outrightly, at least in every campaign, before they start speaking, they say, I preach peace. I preach peace for the sake of this country. I come in peace and I preach peace.
But how do you do that when you're calling your opponent names and really throwing mud and stones at them? If you're given a chance to even just hold them right there, then, it would get murky. How do you preach peace when you're preaching a totally different gospel in this rallies?
When I speak for the two leaders, the two major leaders, I think they stand for peace. The problem is they are honjos. The people behind them are the people trying to take advantage. And that is, I think, the responsibility of the political luminaries, as they were, to actually calm their troops down and tell them, please, accept everyone as they come. Because I also need to be accepted elsewhere. If you don't accept these other people from other side, I might also not get time or ground elsewhere to campaign. So once that message is clear, then I think Kenyans will follow suit, because politics is a very emotive thing, and at that point where Kenyans just need something small to tiff them off. And as long as you have some disgruntled MCA telling you that you don't like this guy, is not for our guy, then that makes guys to start running up and down, and that is something we need to avoid. But then on the other point, I would want to say we have institutions like the National Council of Cohesion, the cohesion body, NCIC. They need to start doing civic education. They actually, if I was to be the CEO of that body, I'll call all politicians, tell them, guys, come here. Now, these are the rules of the game. You first sign, or if you don't sign, or you sign and don't adhere, we're going to call some shots, and we'll have to ensure that you don't actually have you in the race. That will mean something. But now these guys are quiet. I've not heard anything.
There have been attempts. There was even a time they said there's a list of shame.
Did it proceed from there?
Yeah, it didn't. List of shame.
It didn't. So that's how much.
They've actually summoned
that's so much
a number of politicians to answer to certain, remarks they made on the, campaign trail. I mean, is that not enough, or there could be something?
It's not enough. Honest, from where I sit, it's not enough. We need to see these guys not just back once and then disappear and retreat backwards. They need to be at the forefront and say, we're going to deal with everybody who is not for peace in this country.
Before we put that matter to rest, what makes our politics such a do or die scenario? We're victims of circumstances, perhaps, because we could be addressing the problem of let's have peace, let's have tolerance, but we have not really dug deep to look at why is this politics such a high-stake phenomenon? What made it so precious that if I have to ensure that the person from my community is at the top, I have to ensure that the person from my tribe is the one who gets this ticket. Why is it so emotive and high-stake?
I think there's a lot of ignorance in this country. We are yet to break the barrier where we say we have broken even with ignorance. there's also the issue of having a lot of poverty, more than the rich. The number of the poor people vis-a-vis the people who have a good life tends to be a bit more. And so politicians take advantage of these people. They start blaming other politicians and leaders for their poverty. You're poor because of so and so. Your life is not good because of so and so. And so they take advantage of that ignorance and that kind of and poverty. And so when you start hearing from a leader you look up to inciting you against a certain leader, you start now venting out, you're the cause of our poverty. Not so long ago in this country, we had a very dangerous narrative of the dynasties versus the hustlers, where now the hustlers were blaming the dynasties for their poverty. Okay, this is an issue that even the international community had to come in and just help this country, because that was a very dangerous narrative. And so we need to start thinking about, what can I do to improve myself? Not what the politician is doing for me, okay? What do I do to make my life move on? And I can tell you, even the next president and even the next regime, there's not much they will do to change your status quo, unless the things you personally decide, unless the bad decisions that are contributing to where you are, unless you're willing to change them and do things differently, you will continue blaming politicians and leaders for your poverty and your misery. And so what happens now, these cunning politicians will come and incite your situation against the leaders who are in place, and they never do things differently even when they are given the chance. And so we need now to start doing civic education on every platform. The next regime should actually fight ignorance in this country. Say the next 3 years we are fighting ignorance. We are not going to do any development
since we got independence. I mean,
but why do we ban our country? Why do we kill each other at the expense of an election? Isn't that ignorance of the highest order? And that is why I would propose, whoever takes the next government, waste every resource, not waste, use every resource in the next 3 years, just to make sure we have an ignorant-free nation.
Ignorant-free nation, that's a good one. So to achieve that ignorant-free nation, it will have to take a lot for that to happen.
Yeah.
And I just want us to move this conversation forward and look at the role of the voter, let me call him or her that in this context,
Yes.
In deciding who that next leader is going to be. Because we've had these common narratives of power is shared at night, or coalitions this, or exits and realignments. And it's usually
boardroom politics.
boardroom meetings.
Yes.
These decisions that are very crucial, and they're going to have a ripple effect on us as wananchi. They are made by people at the top. Where do we fall as voters? What is it that is our role in making those decisions? Let me start with you, Gibson.
I think what I think is Kenyans are a very enlightened lot, but I don't know, when it comes to elections, then they make the worst decision. It's like that kid who performs so well.
Anyway? have a political party, and those who actually took their time to be members of that political party.
True.
Are we, you know, preaching water and drinking wine, chini ya maji, you know, like are we, you know, we are not really taking this nomination process seriously, and it's a very crucial step to the elections.
Yeah, very. If it walks like a duck, quacks like a duck, then it's a duck. Okay? I'm saying that because of the nomination history of this country. Okay? No sane politician want to be subjected through the nomination process. Because some of those people who are promising change in this country, we know the history, we know what happened. And because unfortunately, some of them have created very popular waves, they have so many aspirants. The same aspirants who are in that wave are also scared of history repeating itself. So no party right now want to subject itself to a nomination process. No aspirant want to be subjected to the nomination process.
They've lost hope.
They have lost
totally
hope
no
in
trust
nominations.
in the nomination
Yes.
process.
I've realized that some of the most very good politicians, big wing politicians, are not even in any party right now. Most of them are either independent or with these small new parties. So that now they're able to bargain. Their bargaining power is, you are a new candidate with a big party, but I'm a well-seasoned politician in a small party. Well, who is it gonna be? You choose for yourself. Okay? Allow me to just add something small on what my brother has said here. There's no way you can vote for someone who insults leaders and other people and you expect change. We say electioneering period is the only time we Kenyans stop thinking. We trade our thinking capacity for sycophancy. You will realize learned people who are supposed to be showing the way in the community are now sycophants who will help the rest of the people. If educated people have turned out into sycophants, now you can imagine what will happen down there. And you know, in Africa they say empowered people are not good worshippers. Politicians thrive in being worshipped. And so one of the things they do, they will make sure that there is so much poverty and pain and agonizing of the voters, so that when they come to look for votes on a weekday like today, okay, when young people are supposed to be working, it's 10 p.m. or 1 p.m. they are able to fill those school fields or the roadside campaigns. No, that is problem. That's what poverty looks like. If you look at the well-advanced nations, most of them campaign at night. So that now
people are busy during the day.
People are very busy during the day, and so for you to attend to a political rally, you have to spare 1 hour to go and listen to what your preferred candidate is offering you, different from the one who was there. And that is why we're saying we have a long way to go. And first things first, let us make sure that we have beaten ignorance, even if it's in the next 5 years, and then we will start shaping this country. If you look at some of the things that the president has done in this nation, he was very objective in laying a foundation, an infrastructural foundation to prepare the nation for the economic revolution that will come. Because everyone is talking about an economic revolution, but no one remembers that an economy is built also on a foundation. So the president has building the foundation to carry us into an economic revolution, but because he is not now making some popular political decisions, he will have to be fought from all angles by now the most popular wave, and he's wondering what is happening. And so it is up to us as voters to start protecting the leaders who have the best interest at heart for us.
Gibson, yes, just as you add to what Willie has said, do you think that sometimes we allow politics to deny us of the right to have good leaders and to deny us the right of enjoying good services from our leaders and from our government?
Unfortunately, that's very true. Unfortunately, that's very true, because now, you see, you elect a leader who is not gone to any school. He was not even a good performer in class. Even the classmates can attest. He's not been known to have run anything, not even a village cattle dip. But you find that is the person who is elected for MP. And that story cuts across the country, not in Turkana, not in cosmopolitan Nairobi where people presume to be learned.
I see where you're going.
So,
but they say leadership is, leaders are born, not made, or it depends on which side of the argument you come from.
yeah, but you see, leadership is demonstrated from previously. There's a run-up to that. What have you done?
Exactly.
But
if
if
you're
you
a
have-
leader, then
yes,
you have
done
some track
something.
record of
yes, the
leadership.
track record must have demonstrated itself at one point or another. But here is a person is not known for having done anything. The only thing maybe is known is to be a very good political heckler. So that is the person you put into office.
That's it.
Because he can shout the loudest, he can be able to twist people around, he can be able to get a huge army of goons to intimidate the opponents. And through that, people decide to say, this seems to be the strong man, let me vote him. It's unfortunate. It's unfortunate really as a country. We need to start, especially, for example, you look at Nairobi, a very serious economy, which runs almost 60% of the economy. You elect a joker for Nairobi.
What do you expect?
What do you expect? Honestly, what do you expect? And I'm told that the politicians know that these sides of Westlands, these sides of the people don't vote, so they go to the poor people in Kayole. So actually, they don't campaign these sides. They campaign in Kayole, Kangemi, Kibera, where they know they have invested in ignorance. They want to take advantage of the ignorance of the people. Not only in ignorance, because even people in Kibera are very much enlightened. They know what is happening, because the economy, once it takes a dip, affects them. But now, these people will be looking at, okay, this one is saying very good policies, and he's saying the right things. But then,
insulting people.
It's not insulting people. The other thing is, this one is, of course, seems to be saying some good things, but then he has given me something to go home with. You know, now, unfortunately, Kenyans, that is where we fail ourselves and say, ule nimekula yake, nitapigia kura. You know, that is unfortunate. That's very unfortunate. And then the elite also now shy off. They shy off and say, even if we vote, it will make a difference.
There is nothing
Let the hooligans
of the day.
choose the person for us who is going to govern us. And then now everybody now decides, I will do just what is good for my family, and what I will. And then at the end of the day, the cycle continues. Since independence, the cycle continues. That is where we have been left behind by the likes of Singapore and the likes.
If you look at this coming election, it's a unique one in so many aspects. But I want to look at it in terms of issues. If you were to put issues on the table that should inform, who becomes the leader, what are some of the issues that Kenyans are currently, going through, that if you were given that mandate to put on the table and tell that person who is vying, this is what we want you to address for us, really, what are those issues for you? What language
Let me give a case in point
represents Kenya?
with myself. Saf, when you started inviting me on your show, I was from the other side of political divide. And so as time comes, I have changed my mind, okay? Because I am thinking about this nation, I am thinking about my children, and I keep telling people, if our children will inherit our struggles, then we are a failed generation. We have failed as fathers. And so what do we need to do? We need to make very unpopular decisions, just for the sake of this country. Let's talk about leaders who are not political. You know, leadership is character. And that is why we said garbage in, garbage out. You cannot vote for garbage in and expect that thing to be so clean when they take in power. It will not happen. There are no political miracles. There are no miracles in character. If someone, we know them by the color they, and at one point people don't hide their character. You will know the kind of a leader who is aspiring to be what? By the way they are talking, by the way they are insulting people. And so we need to look at someone's track record.
Okay.
What's your CV? What have you done for the people? Yes, you want power. Where have you been?
But where are you coming
Where
from?
are you
What's
coming from? You need to have a story of where you're coming from.
Okay, we'll pick up from that, because that is what I find important in this crucial season of making decisions on who becomes the next leader. But I just want us to cross over very quickly to something also happening this morning. At Serena Hotel, currently speaking is Interior CS Dr. Fred Matiang'i at a forum that has brought together member states of the International Conference on the Great Lakes region to discuss matters security. And I just want us to cross over there and listen into what is currently happening.
President Kenyatta and the government of the people of Kenya, I welcome you for choosing to be in Nairobi, and I welcome you to Nairobi. President Kenyatta sends his regards to all of you and his good wishes for a successful plenary session in Nairobi this time. And as a faithful messenger, I now deliver his message. A statement by His Excellency Honorable Uhuru Kenyatta, President of the Republic of Kenya and Commander-in-Chief of the Defense Forces, during the 12th Ordinary Session of the Plenary Assembly of the Forum of Parliaments of the Member States of the International Conference of the Great Lakes Region on the 5th of April 2022. The Speaker of the Kenyan Senate, heads of delegations from the 12 member countries of the Great Lakes region, distinguished guests, ladies and gentlemen, I am most pleased to join you today as we reaffirm the strong alliance of the 12 nations bound together by a shared heritage in the large Rift Lakes region of Africa. We convene at a unique time in the history of the world and the region. Globally, our efforts to build our economies back after the COVID-19 pandemic have been slowed down by a myriad of events on the international stage, events which have put multilateralism as we know it under stress. Therefore, the 12th plenary of the Forum of Parliaments of the Member States of the International Conference on the Great Lakes region is timely, and its theme, the role of Parliament in conflict resolution, is most apt. Ladies and gentlemen, Parliaments are an expression of the sovereignty and majesty of the people. Through those legislative chambers, the soul and the consciousness of the nation are brought to the fore. Parliaments are the voice of the citizens and the hands of their will, and the guardians of the cherished principles and values that define who we are and where we want to go as nations and peoples. Our Kenyan Parliament, for example, since the onset of the COVID-19 pandemic, has been at the forefront of spearheading our national efforts to insulate our people from the adverse effects of this disease, to mitigate the resultant socioeconomic pressures, and to lay the foundation for a bold build back that secures a better and more resilient future for all of us. As this forum was actualized and came to life in the year 2008, the Kenyan Parliament was institutionalizing the national accord between the two main political factions in Kenya after the 2007 general elections. Kenya's august houses were not unique in that regard. Across the region, parliaments answered the call, and through their leadership and decisive actions, kept the flame of freedom, democracy, and progress burning bright, even in unprecedentedly dark times. Drawing from the lessons learned from the COVID-19 pandemic, our legislatures have a unique role to play by continually addressing the issues of equitable distribution of resources and economic development. Parliamentarians are critical in creating and sustaining the enabling environment that guards against the emergence and escalation of conflict. Today, with escalations in commodity prices in the region and around the globe, and severe constraints on supply chains, the challenges we face are ever greater. The road ahead is hard and fraught with uncertainty. However, our individual and collective histories show that we are up to the task, no matter how seemingly insurmountable those challenges may be. Our parliaments are tried and tested. Whenever our people have called on their representatives to take the necessary actions to secure the economy and way of life, our parliaments have led us out of turbulent storms and into the calm waters of peace and prosperity. Ladies and gentlemen, the theme of this 12th plenary assembly, the role of Parliament in conflict resolution, like an African stool, encapsulates the three-legged foundation of firm and stable actions necessary for our progress. Firstly, an appraisal of the collective condition of the Great Lakes region informs that the region remains relatively stable, although with some limited instances of instability, insecurity, and armed conflict. Secondly, at the interstate level, where one's relations among some of our nations had been lukewarm, we can gladly point out to the thawing of tensions and movement towards brighter and more collaborative engagements. Thirdly, the region has turned a corner from the recurring conflicts and tensions that once caused easily avoidable deaths and displacement of many peoples within and across borders, as well as the large-scale destruction of property and misuse of resources. As we emerge from that torrid past, we must not lose sight of the fact that conflict is a scourge that robs our people of immense dividends and opportunities inherent in peace and stability. Conflict increases unemployment, especially of young people, fuels sexual violence against women and girls, deepens the indignity of food insecurity and absolute poverty of populations living in areas of armed conflict. It drives the illegal exploitation and trade in natural resources that provides income to armed groups and gives greater impetus to the proliferation of small arms and light weapons. Ladies and gentlemen, this assembly has the task of providing our 12 nations with a comprehensive and achievable roadmap to our parliaments, contributing more towards conflict resolution. We will only achieve that if we make this 12th plenary assembly a questioning conference. In that regard, I would like to propose a 5-point questioning framework for the participants today. This framework should guide us in understanding the problem and charting the way forward. 1. Is the role of Parliament preventive or responsive after the fact? 2. When Parliament intervenes, at what stage in the conflict cycle should it intervene and how? 3. And alive to the Litma House principles, how should Parliament's intervention role be exercised within the context of the rule of law and the separation of powers and roles? 4. What collegiate and peer review mechanisms can parliaments in the region adopt to both support each other and also hold each other accountable? 5th, how do we inculcate public participation by citizens, bring in civil society, our international partners, and our regional, continental, and global associations, and our built-in shared bonds into this conflict prevention and conflict resolution framework. Ladies and gentlemen, as you deliberate on these very pertinent issues, remember that the eyes and hopes and aspirations of hundreds of millions rest firmly on you. I trust that you shall lead the region into a bright new dawn that is free of conflict, that is bold and responsive to the desire of our people for peace and prosperity, and which breathes life into the unity and common purpose that must be the foundation for our individual and collective peace and security. I urge you to be the voices that champion for a conflict-free Great Lakes region, one which is typified by peace, cohesion, social justice, and realization of the Pan-African dreams of our founding fathers. With those remarks, it's now my distinct honor and high privilege to declare the 12th Plenary Assembly of the Forum of Parliaments of Member States of the International Conference of the Great Lakes Region duly convened, and take this opportunity to wish you fruitful deliberations. I thank you.
All right, that is the Interior CS, Dr. Fred Matiang'i, currently speaking at a forum at Serena Hotel that is themed the role of Parliament in conflict resolution in the Great Lakes region. And currently 12 member states are meeting, representation of 12 member states are meeting at that particular forum to discuss the way forward on how Parliament can play a role in resolving conflict in the region. And we will be giving you more details about that. We have our very own John Jacob Curie attending that forum for us in our subsequent news bulletins. You'll be able to get more about what are the deliberations at that forum. But in studio, we have been talking about matters politics on the road to the 2022 general election. And today, we have actually taken a bigger chunk of this particular forum to talk to the person who is the voter who carries the mantle to decide who becomes the next part of leadership of this particular country, the so-called wenye nchi, who think they are wananchi. You see? And before we took the link, Willie, we were just, discussing what issues ought to inform who becomes the next leader, who will speak our language. I just want you to finish up on that, and also I want your response as well, Gibson.
All right. I'll start by saying that good leaders in this country, guys with a vision, hardly make it to the offices they were looking for, because leadership is in character. If a good character will not look for goons to fight your opponent, a good character will not insult people on political rallies, a good character will not take advantage of the poverty of the people. These are leaders who are always thinking about solutions for the people, permanent and lasting solutions. The other thing we as the voters need to protect these leaders from bad politics, so that at least we can see what they can do for the people. We are just from discussing a point here. How does an elected leader in parliament, in Senate, or a governor has a foundation that gives people water when you have the permanent keys to give people water that they will never need you again? And so you have to make sure that you deny people water, so that you keep supplying them with drops of water for you just to remain relevant in politics. And so these are the kind of leaders we need to do away with and think about a vision. A vision unites. Allow me to quote the Bible. The Bible says, where there is no vision, people perish. A vision is what unites people. Every good thing that is done, every work that is done is towards a vision when there is a vision. And so when there is no vision, people perish. And I am hoping and praying that one day this nation will import labor. When we have created opportunities for our people. I have that dream. I know one day we will get there.
Doesn't seem to believe
but it is up to the voter, not to the leader. It is up to the voter. Yes. One day we need to create a Singapore, a China for ourselves, whereby now we are inviting Britons to come and work here, or the Americans to come and work here, because there are so many opportunities.
But, you know, we have to accept the fact that some of these things are progressive. That there's so much to fix that a leader would have to, you know, you
Even
have to
Rome
give a
was
leader
not built in a
time
day out.
to fix. But are we patient as a populace, Gibson? Sometimes we just want you to fix my problem now. How much are you giving me? Is it 500? Is it 1,000? That's the only way I will listen to you. Can we really blame the leaders? As Kenyans, are we patient to give them that chance and to trust them that you're a good leader? You may not have money, you may not have come to this campaign trail with money, but I will trust in what you stand for, and I will give you this particular chance and give you time to fix whatever problem I have. Do we have that patience?
We need to have the patience. We need to have the patience,
So we
because
don't.
we don't have a choice. We don't have a choice where we start. We need to have the patience. But honestly, then again, the second question is, how much patience do we need? We have been patient since independence. The people whom we started the race with are so far much ahead, the Singapores, the South Koreas. I'm sure, I'm told that they even borrowed some loan to go and implement a policy, some policy. They went and implemented the policy. Our policies are still in the gathering dust somewhere in somebody's office. So how much patience do we need as Kenyans? That is where now, as Kenyans, we need to decide. We have tried this for so long. Can we just try something different? Can we demand more from our leaders? We don't demand anything from our leaders. We only demand that you give me 500, I will vote for you. So the guy goes without an agenda. And when we suffer and start crying, like now fuel is up, you can't tell me that the government is not aware. It's fully aware. Fully aware. There's no fuel. You go to fuel, you're told you can only fuel for 1,000. That is not enough to take you home and come back to work, unless they want you to walk. Is that not impoverishing people? Is that not impoverishing the people?
Tell
So
you guys
how much you exercise.
how much patience do I need when I cannot find milk for my kids?
Exactly.
Because I went to the shops the other day, there's no milk. But my kid doesn't understand that there's no milk. He wants milk because
You're told
that's
to buy
what he
only
needs.
2 packets and nothing more, whether you
go
have
to
money
the-
or not.
You know, I used to laugh at Nigeria some time back that they have oil and they used to have a crisis that they go to the neighboring countries to fuel. It was that bad. But apparently that is becoming our story now. So I don't know whether we are making progress or we're going back. So when you ask about patience, how much patience
Do we need
we're
to
tired.
have? All right.
We're tired.
We will be picking up this conversation in the near future, but unfortunately we've run out of time. I just want to give you a chance for your parting shot. You know, at a time when cooking oil has become something that you can use as dowry. On a light note, it's so precious that if you go to a supermarket and you buy 5 liters of cooking oil, you feel like you have achieved a lot.
Yes,
it's like you've bought 20 acres of land.
Yes, you're an achiever.
Your parting shot, really.
I would say, let's not politicize everything and take it at face value, okay? Because this time we are in an electioneering period. And so those people who have been in government will distance themselves from the mess that is in the nation. They will just grab the glory that we have achieved as a nation. But whatever is bad is for the man who has been at the top. And so we need to critically analyze issues and where are they coming from? From who is telling us? From what political divide are they saying? Because if you're from that end, you will be talking from the both sides of your mouth. We are just from an we have been hit, the world has been hit by a COVID for the last 2 years plus. So the nations of the world are still recovering, okay? I just saw the other day a video in America of a woman who was just about to cook, and then the husband come rushing with that, you know, that syringe. No, don't put that kind of, you know.
It's a lot.
Yes, it's a global problem.
Yes.
And so what we need to do is not complain so much, but just be patient and maneuver these. No, there's no permanent issue.
Yeah.
These two will pass. And so we need to be our brother, sister. And if you're able to buy an extra bottle, an extra liter for your neighbor, just on their birthday, give them that 1 liter and they will appreciate.
Oh my goodness. 1 liter of oil for a birthday gift. We have gotten there. Gibson, your parting shot very quickly.
For me, Safi, it will have to be that we are at that particular crossroad, and we will need to choose the path which we will want to have for our country, for our children, for for everyone else who is going to come after. So we have tried these leaderships. We have seen whatever it is that they can offer. We know who stands for what.
Yeah.
So when we're going to the ballot, let's make the right decision, because that will count for whatever it is. You will be able to go through it for the next 5 years. If you want to still suffer the problem of fuel crisis, where now you will need to go for dowry and pay with oil, if you want us to sing that law, then make your decision there.
All right.
Because that is very clear.
Okay.
Thank you so much. Well said. Gibson Gisore, a lawyer and political analyst. Also with me this morning was Willie Kamau, a political analyst, as we were looking at the road to the 2022 general election as Kenyans decide what is it that is going to be your decision and what are the principles you're going to apply as you make that crucial decision. That is what we dedicated the program for, and we hope that we have helped you. You have learned something. We do this each and every Tuesday and Wednesday right here on News Check, and we'll be picking up this particular conversation next week as well. But for now, we just want to be shifting gears in a while on the second part of the program, where we told you we'll be talking about the reproductive health rights and a special focus on the young population. What is the law saying, and also what is the way forward in addressing the surge in teenage pregnancies in our country? That will be coming up in just a bit. But now we want to cross over to a function currently happening at Pan-Africa Hotel right here in Nairobi, where the Kenya Women Mediators Group are talking about political temperatures in the country and also the plight of persons with disabilities in this particular political season, and how women with disabilities have actually borne the biggest brunt. Let's cross over to that, and then we come back.
We have other forms of violence, not only politics. And the mothers of this country, mothering this country, know the others. One of them is banditry and cattle rustling. Nobody thinks that is violence, but that is violence. And the majority of those who suffer are women, children, women with disabilities who can't even move or see. They are the ones who suffer. Yes. It is sad to note that since the intertribal clashes, conflict in Marsabit, relating to the two main tribes in the area at the end of last year, 40 lives have been lost. Property worth millions lost. Learning interrupted in schools, as schools shut down. Children suffer. The conflict also affected Isiolo, Wajir border. The others we know in Eldoret, Nakuru, Baringo, they are everywhere. People have died. People have been displaced. Properties have been destroyed. This is violence. I want to ask you today, the women of this country are asking you today, members of the press, to carry this question. Who instigates these incidences of violence? And dare say to you, is the so-called people you call leaders. Those people lived for years, married among themselves. Then some people calling themselves leaders came up and began planting discord. Who really cares? The women of this country care. The women of this country are bleeding. We also note another kind of violence. We condemn in the strongest term possible the violence meted out against children in the form of sexual abuse, where we have even seen recently some people calling themselves leaders, taking young girls to hotels and abusing them. They're in courts, so we won't mention their names. They're also called leaders. Some of the perpetrators are even politicians. They have even been named. As well as recently, in the press, they have carried stories of very young children, including my own grandchild, murdered, abducted and murdered in the most dishonorable way, stabbings, including 2 days ago. That is meted out to our children, and you saw them on the screen singing. The women of this country, in particular, want to call out. They are extremely concerned about the height and lip of girls in different parts of the country since the onset of COVID, and it has been baptized COVID-related. We really think this is ridiculous, that the leaders in those areas condone violence. We have not had any of the presidential aspirants speaking out and calling out those violent situations. So they stand to be counted. And the people of this country should decide, do we want people who condone violence? In this respect, we want to call for action. In this respect, we call on all law enforcing agencies, and before I even call for law enforcing agencies, we are calling for safe spaces for women, women with disabilities, and girls. We have no safe spaces in this country, and we want them. We are demanding for them. We call on all law enforcing agencies, including the National Police Service and the Directorate of Criminal Investigations and other security operators, to implement the law to the word, without exceptions. We also urge all politicians to engage in peaceful campaigns. We are demanding, we are not even urging them, we are demanding peaceful campaigns in this country. And to deal, let them not come and say sorry to us once it has happened. Because they're the ones who are giving the money. They give the money, 200 shillings to a youth. That youth goes and drinks, comes home and causes mayhem. Peace begins with you. And today, that is the message of this press conference. Peace begins with me. As God-fearing country, we implore the religious institutions to continue playing an important role in entrenching norms and values. We urge the faith-based institutions to continue condemning. We have seen, we saw the provost of All Saints, Wanaina. He was one of the first ones to condemn this. And we ask the other institutions to do the same, including the mosques. The media continues to play a very important role in highlighting gender-based violence. We urge them to avoid reporting in a manner that glorifies violence. What I see and discuss in KTN, in Citizen every morning, is glorifying peace and showing how important it is the people who have committed these crimes and getting off with it. We really ought to change that narrative. We respect the members of the press. They have been our friends. They have been the friends of women in fighting injustice in this country. But we really think that you should continue to do it in a gender-specific way. As members of the Fourth Estate, therefore, we urge you to be relentless in the efforts for reporting gender-based atrocities. The community is very important in really maintaining peace. We call on all communities to be watchdogs wherever they are and speak out about organizing of violence in their areas, and I help identify the perpetrators. Those are the ones we are telling the institution that keep peace to make sure that they follow. And to conclude this statement, Let me say that.
That is Dr. Jennifer Riria. She's the Group CEO of Eco Network Africa. Just what you've seen on your screens there is a representation of women leaders addressing quite a number of issues that they term as challenges facing women in this political season. And also pivotal in that forum is the plight of persons with disabilities and how they say that women bear the biggest brunt when it comes to some of the issues that come when it comes to the campaign trail in this country. That forum is still underway, and we'll be giving you more details about some of the issues being raised by women leaders in our subsequent news bulletins. But we are just done with our first part of the interview. In case you're just joining us, in a bit we'll be crossing into the second part of the program. And this morning I told you we'll be addressing the reproductive health rights, and we are focusing this morning on what the law says and also how these rights are implemented when it comes to the young population. And also we'll talk about proactive approaches to addressing some of the challenges that young people face, such as the surge in teenage pregnancies. What is it that needs to be done before we get to the point of falling apart as a country? That conversation I'll be having shortly with a panel of two, and I'll be letting you in on who they are when we come back. Let's take a short commercial break, and then we'll kickstart this conversation in just a bit.
Ili kupata Warumi 8 kama skiza tune kwenye simu yako, bonyeza *811 *815#.
Nina hakika kwamba hakuna kinachoweza kukutenga na upendo wa Mwenyezi Mungu. Si kifo, si malaika, si vitu tulivyokuwa navyo au tutakavyokuwa navyo, si mamlaka au chochote kitakachoumbwa. Warumi 8:38 hadi 39.
Kupata Warumi 8, bonyeza *811 *815#. *811 *815#.
Vitimbi Jumatatu hii. Jumuika nasi siku ya Jumatatu ili upate uhondo kamili kwenye vitimbi. Hiyo basi usikose burudani tosha kila siku ya Jumanne hadi Alhamisi saa 1:35 katika tamthilia ya Maza.
Jack is my husband. Don't you think of stealing him away. If you don't want to meet me in court, you'd better leave him immediately.
You've married twice already. If you get another divorce, it will disgrace our family.
She also told me to teach you some manners. Stop going to their workplace just to cause trouble. That's foolish. Shannon, I can't live without you. I really can't live without you, Shannon.
Welcome back, and thank you for staying with us. We really appreciate your time. In case you're just joining us, this is News Check, a program that seeks to explore issues shaping the news and conversations in the country. And what we do here, we usually bring in experts in studio to break down some of these issues for you and to give you useful insights on how they can better your life and how you can make better decisions. So today we want to talk about reproductive health rights for the second hour of our program. And when you talk about sexual and reproductive health, is a fundamental human right as well as a human development issue that states are obligated to fulfill. We have international and local human rights instruments such as the Constitution that has actually gone a step ahead to ensure that some of these rights are enshrined in it. But we still face a lot of challenges in implementation of some of the provisions in these human rights instruments, both locally and even internationally. So here in our country, what we have seen is lack of awareness, lack of goodwill, lack of that intentional effort to make sure that some of these rights are fulfilled. And we want to talk about what the law says when it comes to reproductive health, but we will also be focusing on the problem that we are currently facing as our country, that's the surge in teenage pregnancies, and look at the best approach to addressing this issue, both before, during, and after. So how do we safeguard our population, our young population? That is the question we are asking this morning. So allow me to introduce my guests for this conversation. I'll start with the gentleman, the only gentleman on the panel. His name is Martin Olo. Martin is an advocate of the High Court and also serves as the senior legal advisor at the Center for Reproductive Rights. And of course, Martin is serving in this capacity as a public interest litigator, human rights and democracy defender, and international criminal law expert, as well as a public policy and advocacy consultant. And I can go on and on about his rich profile, but allow me to stop there. Thank you.
Thank you very much. And just as a matter of correction, it's Martin Onyango.
Martin Onyango.
Yes, I know I have a namesake called Lolo who also appeared.
Thank you for that, yes. Martin Onyango.
Thank you.
All right, and we have Dr. Judith Olo. That's where the confusion came. An expert in human rights law. She's the Chief Executive Officer at the Center, East African Center for Human Rights. If you like, you can call it Each Rights. And she, at the time of her appointment, she was serving as a lecturer at Jomo Kenyatta University of Agriculture and Technology and headed the Department of Public Law. She has also worked at the Catholic University of East Africa as a lecturer and also as a head of Department of Private Law. She's also an advocate of the High Court and very passionate about human rights, child rights, and also the girl child. Thank you for creating time for us.
Thank you for having me.
All right, so we want to start this conversation straight away, and there's a current crisis that we are facing as a country, especially in this COVID-19 pandemic. Some say it was there, that COVID-19 just gave us an opportunity to look at it and highlight it. That's the teenage pregnancy menace. Some say COVID-19 actually played a role to escalate the cases of teenage pregnancy. I'll just like to begin from a general comment from both of you. Where do you stand in this argument? Is it COVID, or is it a problem that you have always been having as a society? I'll start with you, Dr. Olo.
Thank you very much, Serfine. From where I stand, I think it is a problem that has always been there, but then COVID-19 situation escalated it, because it is at that time that we saw that schools were closed and children were spending a lot of time at home. And to a very large extent, we realized that schools are a very good mechanism for protecting children. But now that children were at large, they were open to lots and lots of violations, and that is the reason why we saw a serious upsurge in cases of teenage pregnancies.
Your opening remarks as well, Martin?
Yes, thank you, Serfine. I think teenage pregnancy has been here with us, and as Dr. Loa said, COVID made the situation worse by reducing the protection normally available to children, to young people in other fora, including schools. So I concur that actually COVID just made the situation worse, but teen pregnancies is a challenge we've been grappling with as a country. and we need to do more to protect our children. Yes.
Indeed, and we'll talk about how do we address this problem before we wind up this program. And I know you have very beautiful interventions that you will share with us that we may borrow from as a country, what even your organizations have been part of. But before that, I will not take our viewers this morning on the numbers of teenage pregnancy. I'm sure we have been taken through that over time. Something that stood out for me when I was preparing for the show was when I looked at the Kenya Demographic Health Survey of 2014, the latest that we have. It's years back, but unfortunately
it's
that's the
current
latest
that we can refer to. Yes.
Yes. And what I was looking for is the median age at first sexual intercourse, because the concern has been, are we burying our heads in the sand when we are saying the youth should not be exposed to comprehensive sexual education, we should not be talking about this? So that has been a concern. So I went back to look at what is the median age of first sexual intercourse in Kenya. And when I looked at what the survey was giving us, 18 years for women, 17 years for men. And if you compare that with the previous one that was done in 2008, 2009, there is no much difference. The median age was 18.2 years for women and 17.6 for men. I understand currently the Kenya Bureau of Statistics is doing another one that will be out very soon. Are you foreseeing a scenario where the trend will change, or it is time for us to actually stop burying our heads in the sand and address this particular issue? Dr. Olo.
Thank you, Serfine. From where I sit also, I think that the number of, rather the median age of children having sex is really much lower.
It's getting lower.
Lower and lower to really pathetic levels, quote unquote. Because from what we see in the media, we now see that even 9-year-olds, 11-year-olds, we see that they are pregnant. And of course, for that to happen, some activity must have happened in the background. So having gotten pregnant is just one thing, but a lot of them are actually having this, having sexual intercourse at a very young age. And that's why we have large numbers of them also dying, unfortunately, during childbirth. And that's why the number of mortality rates is really going high when it comes to women, and also complications that arise as a result of childbirth. So we have a lot of children having sex, and it is necessary to actually have this conversation. We can no longer afford to bury our heads in the sand, because it's really going to get worse. Our children are our future, and if we are to help them, if we love them at all, then this discussion is something that we need to bring to the table. Yes.
I know, Martin, you work with an organization that has championed such rights, championing these rights, and borrowing from that experience, where did we miss it? You know, where did we go wrong? Why are we suddenly in this particular quagmire?
Thank you. I think I will start from where you started. I'm not concerned more about the median age, because the median age just looks at what is the upper and the lower age and divides it into two. But I'm more concerned about when the sexual debut starts. I will be more concerned about the few who actually have their first sexual debut when they're below 10. And ask ourselves, how are we protecting them? Because by the time you get to 18, you have millions and millions of children who have had their first sexual debut. And the problem is that children, and when you use the term children, I know some viewers are looking at a 3-year-old. But you know, a child is from 0 to 18 years. I am more concerned about the adolescent who has reached puberty, is engaging in sex. And where did the rain start beating us? Is that one, we've encouraged, and we really encourage all children to get formal education, and we said schools are a protective mechanism for development and also protecting children. But what we have denied children in these institutions is also to learn about their development as people, as male, as female, so that children then start sexual debut without information. We do not even tell them that actually at this tender age, you are not prepared, you are not ready to engage or to deal with consequences of a sexual intercourse. And if you must engage in sexual intercourse, this is what you need to do so that you are not in danger. We have denied children that chance to get that information through denying them what we call comprehensive sexuality education. Unfortunately, we are denying them this chance in schools, but out of schools, there is no mechanism, there is no framework, again, to provide them with this information. And you know, when sexual debut begins, for boys and for girls, health services that are required to help the children, to help the adolescents enjoy or grow as responsible young people into responsible adults. The health services, we also unfortunately deny them the health services. We deny information, we deny them health services. So we then now
deny.
And we also deny ourselves the fact that these children or these adolescents are having sex. So it is a dark environment where we deny the children information, we deny them services, and we also deny that they're having sex up to the point that they are expectant. So that is where the rain started beating us. Denial of information and denial of services to young people, and refusing to accept that actually young people, they are human beings and they are developing and they are also engaging, for example, in sexual intercourse, whether experimental or, for example, there are some mature minors who are engaging, for example, in commercial sex. We have just denied that this exists.
And it is a problem, and it's becoming really thorny, and we are seeing the results, we are seeing the consequences out here already. No wonder we are having this conversation. Dr. Olo, I mean, for those who feel that comprehensive sexuality education is not warranted, especially for the young population, they've raised concerns of this will expose the young minds to information that is not meant for their age, that this will open loopholes for them to just get out there and engage in whatever sort of activities that they want to engage in. Concerns such as those, how do you address it? And the if that Martin also raised, that don't engage in sex, but if you do, this is what you need to do to protect yourself. There are people who are still reserved about the if. How do you address those concerns?
Thank you so much for that question. I was about to jump in when Martin was still making his point.
Yeah.
I think the biggest misconception there is about comprehensive sexuality education is that children are being given information that they're not supposed to have. But if we go back behind our history, we realize that even in the 50s, in the 60s, our parents went to their aunties and to their uncles to be taught something like this. But our children now, we are busy, we go to work in the morning, we come back in the evening. There's no time to really engage. And so comprehensive sexuality education is actually very necessary, because someone has to talk about this thing. We can no longer continue to hide, because at the end of the day, even if we do not want to accept it, we realize that children are having sex, and it is best that they have the information that they need if they're going to engage in that, because we want to protect them. And this is not a whole scale or a wholesale opening of a Pandora's box to allow children to have sex. I think that is the misconception. We are saying you need this information. You are developing. You're a girl, this and these changes are happening to you. You are a boy, this and these changes are happening to you. So sexuality education is not just about the sex itself, but understanding your body, understanding what is happening to you, and being able to relate with other people experiencing the same thing, and realizing that it is nothing, well, it is something unique. Teenagehood is something you can enjoy, but you are better off enjoying, or you better off understand how to live your life when you have all the information and you are expecting certain things to happen to you. But when you don't, then these things happen and you are in shock, and you confide in your people of your age who also do not know much. They're in the same train with you, and this is what leads to lies and lies, or misconceptions over misconceptions, and children now have their own gangs against the parents, where if they want information about sex, they tell their friends. If they want information about a certain boy they like or don't like, they tell their friends, but they will never tell the parent that, hey, this and this guy is hitting on me, or this and this guy beat me up, or this and this guy touched me inappropriately. But if we are going to have comprehensive sexuality education, then we are going to tell them this is the information and these are the limits. This is how to even report in case you feel violated. But this is the thing that we are denying our children.
Who should do this? In a society that is a taboo topic, you don't discuss it with your son or daughter. So I mean, how do we go about it? Whose mandate is it to offer this sort of education?
Thanks, Serfine. And I think where we are now talking about when now what you'd say are traditional norms, when they fail, when the setup does not then offer the information and services to the adolescent, who should take this up? And that is where the responsibility of the state comes in. The government has a responsibility, one, to ensure that everybody has the information that will enable them enjoy the highest attainable standard of health, because your sexuality, your reproductive health is part of your right to health. So the government has a responsibility to provide that information to everybody, not to adults. Of course, adults, it's a funny situation where adults think that they are the only ones who are entitled to rights. Human rights belong to everyone. Children, adolescents, adults, old people, they all have equal rights. So the government has a responsibility to provide this information so that where parents fail, where societies fail, to provide the alternative fora for informing young people, the government then has the responsibility to ensure that they have this information. And where is the forum that the government can do this? And that is why there has always been a clamor that can we teach comprehensive sexuality education in schools?
In schools, okay,
yes.
That's one of the
Yes, so that is one of the avenues. But also government has a responsibility then to provide the safety net, the protection framework, that those who do not have this information in schools, can they find it out of schools? Those who cannot access services, can they access these services even if they're not out of school? Because we cannot assume every young person is in school. There are also young people who are out of school. And that is where now we talk about information and services, whether those who are still in, whether you are still in school or you are out of school.
All right. I just want us, because we're both legal minds, and I want to, just take advantage of that and talk about how the reproductive health rights are addressed in the, legal and policy framework in this country. When you talk about rights, people are comfortable when you're talking about right to vote, right to freedom of speech, freedom of worship, but when you're talking about reproductive health rights and the young population, it's like people are divided into two, especially on some issues that the law addresses. I just want to, first of all, begin by just giving you a chance to tell me how the reproductive health rights that touch on the young people are addressed in the legal and policy frameworks in this country. Let me begin with you, Dr. Olo.
Thank you.
What laws or policies touch on these issues?
There's the Constitution of Kenya that provides for right to health in general. And of course, lots of areas of right to health are taken care of. There's maternal health, psychological health, and all manner of health, including sexual and reproductive health rights. It's only that a lot of focus when it comes to that is given to adults, people who are in a marriage setting, marriage arrangement, talking about right to have children and how many of them within what specific period of time. But then when it comes to children, like Martin was saying earlier, we just refuse to accept that children are having sex.
Do they apply to young people? I want you to give me laws and policies in the context of the young people.
Yes, so Constitution applies to everyone, including young people. So the Constitution provides for right to health. We also have the Health Act, the National Health Act, that provides for everyone to be entitled to the best health that there is, and that includes children as well. I'm sure there are a number of policies that Martin, would you like to speak about that? When it comes to the policy level, which policies have been put in place to just support sexual and reproductive health rights in terms of what facilities are available to children, child-friendly services, for example, where they can get advice regarding contraceptives, where they can get the actual contraceptive should they need it. And also now the issue that led, of course, to the case that is there recently about abortion services if it is necessary, because of course by children having sex, pregnancy is a natural consequence, and so are we availing the services? The law is saying that such services are available, only that when it comes to interpreting their availability for children, then we sort our personal biases, our religious values, our personal values come in, and we sort of just say reject or deny. Yes.
Do those pieces of legislation apply as an umbrella, like, you know, cutting across all generations, the adults and the young children, especially when you're talking about contraceptives, availability of such services, for example? There are people who are a bit still skeptical about that.
Thank you, Serfine. Besides what Dr. Law has said that applies to everyone, I think the government in 2015, the Ministry of Health made deliberate efforts to address the needs of adolescents when it comes to accessing reproductive health care. Hence the adolescent sexual reproductive health policy of 2015 that aimed to address the challenges or the gaps that existed, especially from service provision perspective, where some people felt that, oh, I need to ask your mother whether to give you a condom or whether to put you on a contraceptive. And that policy clearly calls on the need to provide adolescents not just with information, but also to provide services. The implementation framework of that policy requires the provision of youth-friendly services, hence the creation of even youth-friendly centers where young people can go and find services offered that are friendly to them, where, for example, you are not asked about your age. But let us not forget that the issues that are thorny are very few. It is on contraceptives for young people. It is on access to abortion care for young people and adults. It is on providing comprehensive information to young people, which is opposed by some people but generally accepted, because even in churches, one of the basic information that we tell young people is, if you're not ready to deal with the consequence of sexual intercourse, please abstain. I'm sure many churches preach abstinence, for example. So the information is available. Unfortunately, the universality of that information is lacking. People select what to tell young people. They deny them the wholesomeness of the information. But then when it comes to contraceptives, for example, a young person, a young lady, a young girl, 16-year-old who is pregnant and wants to keep that pregnancy and has gone for antenatal care, they are treated like an adult who is expectant, and they are given all the information, and even after birth they are put on the contraceptive when they so wish. But the young person who wants to avoid a pregnancy is denied that information, and some people have a challenge in providing them with a contraceptive. And that is what the gap the policy aimed to address. What challenge do we see? There are people who are uncomfortable with implementing that not just service providers, but there are also policy makers who speak contrary to government policy. When the Constitution says we all have access to health and as a right and reproductive health care services, it simply means those who need those services cannot face barriers, unnecessary barriers to access those services. That you cannot bring your personal bias. You may not like the fact that a 16-year-old is having sex, but if a 16-year-old boy comes to a shop to buy condoms, he is entitled to buy those condoms because he acknowledges that sex without condoms, he may get HIV.
How do we address that very loud concern on the other side of the divide? Because, you know, should we then say that the law and these policies clash with the tradition, clash with the cultural values, clash with the religious values? Can we afford to ignore those concerns, Dr. Olo?
Not necessarily.
How do we reach like a middle ground?
I think awareness creation and having open conversation is one of the ways to bring the opposite ends to actually meet. Like I said earlier, children are having sex and we see consequences of that. A lot of children are having children. currently. Yeah, some of them are out of school, some of them are back to school, and we want to ensure that we have the best that is possible for our children. But then saying some of our cultures are also retrogressive, not all of them, but most of our cultures are retrogressive. So let us speak those cultural values that helps us to move forward, like those ones that allow us to talk to our children, those cultures that can actually speak to their children, though that is almost non-existent these days, where parents sit down to speak to children. But then legislations are a reflection of what is happening in the society. Actually, legislations are a cure to social problems, and therefore for us to have a law in place that protects those children and articulates that they need or they should be guaranteed this service ABCD, it means that legislators have looked into the issue and are convinced that that is the way to cure the problem. And as such, we should be able to embrace the law because the laws are passed for the good of us. Yes. We are all from different communities. Some communities can talk about sex, others may not. I understand that people in the coastal area are more free or more talking about sex, but other parts of the country may not be. Yeah, and that is perfectly fine. But when it comes to the law has a uniform application. We will not pick and choose which communities to apply, which religious values to apply. We should embrace the law as it is because it is good for us. Yes.
I just want us, I'll come back to that a little bit later, but just before we go so deep into this conversation, there's something that Martin brought out about, the law that touches on provision of abortion care services, that actually recently there was what was called a landmark ruling in Malindi by the Malindi High Court concerning a case that involved a minor aged 16 from Kilifi County. I just want you to give us a bit of background on this particular case, and then I'll raise some issues of concern that those who are anti that particular constitutional provision have raised, so that at least we can get clarity on what's the way forward, what's the best way to implement this piece of legislation. But first, let's begin from the genesis.
Thank you very much. And I want to contextualize this conversation from the point that sexual violence or defilement of children is here with us. Traditionally, children were protected from sexual predation. That has ceased, so the law has come in to protect children. So when you have a sexual intercourse as an adult with a child, it is called defilement, and you need to be prosecuted and taken to jail. And the consequences of dealing with consequences of sexual violence, what we had provided in law from the year 2006 in the Sexual Offences Act is that when a child is defiled, part of the remedy that is available to them is not to force them to carry the pregnancy if they don't wish, is to allow them to terminate that pregnancy. That is 2006 in the Sexual Offences Act, before we even passed our new constitution. And the Ministry of Health developed guidelines for management of sexual violence, which clearly provided that for survivors of defilement, they need to be informed that if they wish, they can terminate the pregnancy, and the health provider is required to offer that service to them with dignity. The case we are talking about depicts a problem we have in our society. That one, healthcare providers providing reproductive health care, abortion and contraceptives, contraceptives to young people and abortion to everyone, are always targeted by law enforcement agency for extortion, for arrest, and for prosecution, quote unquote, for providing abortion, assuming blanketly that abortion is not allowed in law. But the problem gets bigger when a child is defiled. The law allows this child to access abortion, but when this child goes to the provider, the police arrest the provider and arrest the child and take them to court and treat them as criminals. The tendency has been that patients are arrested from the clinics where they are seeking care. So the police just wait for a tip-off or set a trap, arrest the patient, and arrest the provider. So that is the background to the Malindi case. This was a case of a young schoolgirl who was defiled, and for her, she lost the pregnancy. She was experiencing bleeding, and when she went to the facility, the clinical officer noted that she had lost the pregnancy, and so the clinical officer provided what we call post-abortion care. But the police pounced on the clinic, arrested the girl, and arrested the clinical officer and charged them with providing and seeking abortion care. And they were, the young girl was kept in remand for about 1 month, taken away from the hospital bed, denied a chance to go to school, kept in remand for over 1 month, harassed, intimidated, not allowed even to finish her medication at the hospital. So this is the case that then, as the Center for Reproductive Rights took to court, challenging that, one, abortion is allowed under certain circumstances in our law. Two,
which circumstances are this? Because I just want us to use this
our constitution allows abortion, one, in emergency situations, or when the health of the woman is in danger, or when the life of the woman is in danger, or when allowed by any other written law. And there you now reference the Sexual Offences Act for survivors of rape and defilement. So that while we have the criminal law, the penal code, that defines what is a wrong in our law, it cannot therefore define what is allowed by the Constitution as a wrong. What is allowed by the Constitution is protected, so that access to abortion for that category of people and under those circumstances, you cannot then prosecute anybody for doing quote-unquote something unlawful, because it is sanctioned by the Constitution. So the circumstances that this young girl and the provider found themselves was that the police pounced on them and charged the young girl and the provider for seeking a reproductive health care service allowed in law. But here were the policemen charging them for doing something unlawful. And they protested before court that no, she came for
it's very clear it's enshrined in the law, like you cite, but under what circumstances and or what is it that will help us address the gray areas in this? Because how do we set like a concrete boundary to know that this is exclusively a case of defilement, or this person is under threat or risk, or this pregnancy is high risk, without, you know, the loopholes that can be abused by some people who just want to use that piece of legislation to get rid of pregnancies that they do not necessarily feel like they want to carry. They're not at any point in any health risk, or they were not defiled, but they just want to use that piece of legislation as a loophole to, you know, procure an abortion. How do we safeguard against? Those are the concerns that those who are anti this piece of legislation are raising. Dr. Law, maybe you can respond to that.
Okay, can start.
Yes, I think Dr. Law can respond, and then I will.
You can add.
I think one of the assumptions around laws regarding, or laws that protect sexual and reproductive health rights, is that they are prone to abuse. That is the assumption. I think at the point that someone determines that they would like to procure an abortion, it is really a very important issue, and it's not like when laws are passed that guarantee or that protect the right to have an abortion under certain circumstances, then it is a whole scale, sort of, it is open for all and it is open for abuse. No. One of the things that needs to be done is awareness creation, and awareness creation should be done for all the population, so that even those who condemn, they must first understand that this has to be done within certain circumstances. I think that in itself will remove the dark cloud, for lack of a better word, or the obscenity or the taboo around the issue of abortion. Because in certain cases, abortion is the lifesaver. When you're having an ectopic pregnancy, for example, you should terminate it as soon as possible, and therefore you're able to save your life, and in certain cases, maybe the life of the child. I'm not sure. But then it is necessary. It is not an issue of you deciding to choose. But then come to look at the other side, whereby because we have made this topic such a taboo, you find that girls are still trying to procure abortion anyway. Yeah, unfortunately they're doing it backstreet. Just this morning when I was preparing for this show, I read some report from Amnesty International saying that up to 26,000 girls get incapacitated every year because of trying to procure abortion by themselves, and then they go to the hospital when things have really gone bad. So can we prevent this situation from happening by clearly pointing out that abortion, yes, is allowed, but within these circumstances, this is what you need to do. Information is free. We should make it available to everyone, but then the right information through capacity building, through just informing everyone about what they need to know concerning abortion.
All right. I still want to take you back, but let me also get your sentiments, Martin.
Thanks. I think to add to that, one of the assumptions we make is that we put ourselves in the shoes of the people the Constitution has termed as trained health professionals. The decision or the provision of healthcare is not for any Tom, Dick and Harry. It's not even for policemen. And that is why we train healthcare providers. And so the Constitution talked about trained health professionals. And Parliament, in its wisdom, clarified who trained health professionals are: doctors, nurses, midwives, clinical officers. And the Ministry of Health in 2012 then developed standards and guidelines to manage the process of information service provision and care post service, so that there exist comprehensive guidelines to guide the process of information, the determination to terminate a pregnancy, and care during termination of pregnancy and post-abortion care. The assumption that many people have is that people will just get abortion willy-nilly. In Kenya,
it's like we are setting ourselves for
Kenya, access to abortion has then been left as an engagement before the woman and a trained healthcare professional. The healthcare professional is then regulated by the professional body. And the judgment by Justice Nyakundi clearly clarifies that, one, it is then for Parliament to ensure that we have in place a law and a public policy that guides the process of accessing reproductive health care services, including abortion, within the Constitution. Why is it that we don't have a contention when it comes to maternal health care, I mean antenatal, postnatal care? It is because we bring our personal prejudices against certain services. But who suffers most? And I think this is the last point that I need to make. That these prejudices affect, one, poor people who cannot access services, for example, from private healthcare providers. They affect marginalized women and girls. It is the poor, it is the marginalized who suffers most. These barriers are not for you and me who will walk to a private healthcare facilities and access care. These barriers are created for those who are actually seeking care from government facilities. And that is the pain we need to address.
Okay, actually time has really flown on our side here, but I don't want us to wind up before I take you way back. I don't want us to get to, you know, this crisis point that we have to be discussing abortion, discussing contraceptives for our young people. How do we prevent ourselves from getting to that particular point? And as part of your closing remarks, there is a good initiative that your organization is currently spearheading, Tunza Watoto Wetu program. I don't know whether it carries some sort of hope for us, interventions that are proactive, that can actually save us as a society from getting to this particular point. Dr. Olo.
Yes, thank you very much. Sorry, I want to just add on what Martin was saying.
We don't have time.
About abortion not being a cosmetic surgery. It is not something you choose. You find yourself in a situation and you have to deal with it. But anyway, just to answer, at the East African Center for Human Rights, we run Tunza Watoto Wetu. And the agenda behind Tunza Watoto Wetu is to really capacity build children and to make available information that they need, even as they go through the different development stages, to be able to understand their sexuality and to be able to, in case of any violations, be able to raise concerns. Because one of the things we see, the society is very closed, parents are very busy with work and not really, not having much time to attend to their children, and children are left to their own devices. A lot of children are abused at home, a lot of children are abused by uncles, a lot of children are abused by teachers, by people they know, but they do not know what avenues are available for them to be able to make reports, or even go to make police reports and go to healthcare centers for purposes of getting treatment. As such, Tunza Watoto Wetu is really a toolkit that is intended to build the capacity of children to understand the various situations they are dealing with, and to be able to make reports and concerns, if at all, about their sexual and reproductive health rights. And this is also in the context of the rise in the number of teenage pregnancies, that we cannot look the other way. Protection of children is at the center of what we do, and so we want to preempt. Before a pregnancy happens, we will capacity build them and allow them to understand what is happening in their bodies, and to also be able to avoid cases of pregnancy. And if there's any threat to that particular child, perpetrated by a teacher, by a parent, by a relative, or who else that is sexual or sexually related, then they are empowered to be able to make complaints at the right time before they are violated. After they are violated, we also lay down a procedure of how they are supposed to report or a complaint to either a healthcare service provider or even police station. So because we know that, or we believe that, when children are empowered, when they have the information, they're able to make the change that we seek we want to see, because a lot of time they are on their own. We are not with them all the time. But when we empower them, that is the token that we give them to protect themselves. Yes.
Yeah, great initiative there. We should have a sit down just to talk about defilement and the process, how to identify, how to know that you're in danger, how to report, and what happens post the arrest.
Yes.
You know, just to create awareness and help our young people also understand that. Your parting shot, Martin.
Thank you very much. I think in parting, from the Center for Reproductive Rights, we have managed to secure for women and girls in this country a few things through the Malindi case. That one, harassment of service providers for providing abortion care must now be a thing of the past. Women and girls are entitled to seek the care they need from those who are qualified to provide that service without intimidation. And it is then the responsibility of government, where there is no clear policy, put in place that clear policy. Where there is no law, put in place that clear law. But the protection of access to reproductive health care, including abortion, in the Constitution has now been upheld. Policemen must cease henceforth from harassing both providers and women and girls seeking reproductive health care in the name of enforcing the law.
All right. Thank you so much, Martin Onyango, Senior Legal Advisor at the Center for Reproductive Rights. I was also having this sit down with Dr. Judith Olo. She is the Chief Executive Director at the East African Center for Human Rights, also known as Each Rights. Thank you, both of you, for your time. Of course, it's a conversation that we cannot conclude in one sitting. So looking forward to picking this up in the near future as we talk about how to, save our young population. And of course, that is how we wrap it up on News Check. But in just a bit, we'll be having the Swahili version of the program, Tamrini and Kurunzi Mashinani. But before that happens, I just want us to cross over to something happening this morning. Honorable Sabina Chege is currently launching a children autism awareness program. And I understand also a clinic with regards to this is going to be unveiled. This is happening at City Primary School grounds in Ngara, right here in Nairobi. Let's cross over to that. My name is Serfine Achieng. Thank you so much for watching.
You go to a class, are we equipping you well? Are we giving you the required instruments or equipment that you may need even in class for these children? At this point, when we start here, tumeka tu dakika kidogo tu, and you can see their stress. So, do we provide with you equipment that can be able to keep them busy? Hata kama ni vitu za kucheza, ama ni vitu za kuwapatia ile attention yao ikuwe centered na uweze kuwafundisha. So I would really appreciate if I can get that feedback on what we need to do. When I was with Mangojire Institute of Nursing Primary, I also asked myself, how many of these units do we have? Back home, I think we only have one facility, one of the schools, but combines all special needs. At least you have a special unit of autism. But what happens at the Kenyan now is that we mix all the children with different needs who may need to be given different attention, but we all put them in one basket. And I think we need to pull up ourselves. We need for you to share with us what do we need to do. And so I really want to thank Mangojire also for giving me an opportunity kuja kukaa na hawa wazazi na pia to interact with our specialists who came here today. I want to appreciate that even the training that our doctors are having in our nurses, we actually train general training, even the nurses. But that specialty where we can be able to know this specific nurse or this specific doctor is specialized in autism alone, so they're able to give it the attention. I think that these are some of the policies that we can share. We don't need to reinvent the wheel. We need to learn from the best and implement it. So I want to really appreciate you, and I want nataka kuambia wazazi hizo siku 3 ama 4 mmeitwa hapa.
Get ready for the next big thing.
A woman with a voice is by definition a strong woman.
So we need to start bringing out the profession in a woman.
When we demonstrate, they will come when we've been tear gassed, not when we want to pass the message.
The Dada's Show is back, a show where women get to be themselves and discuss real issues.
She cannot allow other women to come on the same space because she's getting different privileges from men. So akiona mwanamke, ako like, this is a competitor.
This being an election year, we have given an opportunity to women to express themselves and share their expectations during this critical moment in our country.
The issue of corruption and how it has impacted women and children in this country.
Create jobs for the informal sector, create jobs for the youth who leave the universities.
Hatutaki bora uongozi, tunataka uongozi bora.
Keep your heels, head and standards high. Dadas, coming soon. Vitimbi Jumatatu hii. Jumuika nasi siku ya Jumatatu ili upate uhondo kamili kwenye vitimbi. Hiyo basi usikose burudani tosha kila siku ya Jumanne hadi Alhamisi saa 1:35 katika tamthilia ya Maza.
Jack is my husband. Don't you think of stealing him away. If you don't want to meet me in court, you'd better leave him immediately.
You've married twice already. If you get another divorce, it will disgrace our family.
She also told me to teach you some manners. Stop going to their workplace just to cause trouble. That's foolish. Shannon, I can't live without you. I really can't live without you, Shannon.
Mimi si eti nakupenda na kuhurumia tu.
Unavyolia sana ni kama omboleza. Sio vizuri.
Mimi sitaki maneno mengi, lakini kama ukijua kila mtu atarudi alipotoka.
Kwani mtu hawezi kunisaidia mpaka iwe nimemhonga ama kumtishia?
Badi, umefanya nini? Sivyo unavyofikiria kaka.
Umeona naba mtu wewe? Lea, yule ndo mwenzangu.
J'ai rarement